I'm going to hand over now to our moderator. Please welcome Marcia Bartusiak.
So I think we want everyone, all the speakers to gather here for our Q&A. Thank you, one and all. You have so many questions. I'm hoping we're going to have enough time to get them all in. My apologies if we run out of time. And, okay, so we have a mic there that will be handed back and forth, I presume. Well, let's open up. This is a question to everyone. Amy, though, particularly said that failures are welcome. So the question was, do you think failure then is actually essential to a degree? In other words, does it hurt to have a fairy tale career? Do you actually need failure? Who might want to start with answering that? Regina, you have the mic.
I mean, I was going to pass it to Amy. That's what I was doing with the mic. I guess I'll just say quickly that just speaking honestly, I do have a bit of a problem with this like fetishization of failure. And I mean, even how many people have heard the phrase failing upward? Okay. So, it's associated with like Silicon Valley and kind of the startup world. I think it's not a coincidence that that's a world populated by wealthy white men. And I think that we do need to recognize that failure is not an equal opportunity game. Some people have the luxury of being able to fail and they suffer no adverse consequences from it and maybe even benefit from it. Think Wall Street executives, or more benign example would be tenured professors who have the luxury of launching projects that might fail and not losing their jobs. Whereas for other people, the consequences can be more severe. So I think that, to the person who asked the question, just taking a realistic assessment and of course, trying to innovate, but being aware of the consequences that might be out there if it doesn't go well.
I was going to say, I don't think there are any fairy tale careers. Yeah.
It's sort of a natural part of the game.
Yeah, it's a natural part of the game.
No matter
now,
what the
definitely, we have big and small f, and maybe, some are very, very small f, and some are larger, and all the way up to, really large and painful. But it's definitely part of the game in discovery and research, no question about it.
Well, Susan wanted to add.
I think parallel to what Daniel was saying earlier, I think it was Daniel who was talking about fear, was it? Is that people hide their failures. And I think it's very important to acknowledge when you've made mistakes and not hide them. That's the way you can figure out how to do differently or understand the conditions under which they're more or less likely. But the worst thing that happens, and you see it in students and you see it in yourself and others, is you make believe, that everything is okay when it's not. And that's the biggest mistake that I see.
But the students need to hear that from their mentors.
Well, I can
or their
tell when a
supervisors.
student is in trouble. They don't come to see you, They just hide. And I send out little emails, say, how come I haven't seen you lately? And I did the same. I hid for years. Nobody takes so long to finish. I didn't go to conferences. I didn't talk to people. I was all by myself doing this. That's not the way to do it.
A follow-up to Susan, a separate question. Do you have any advice to students who do need to take more time to finish, to be more resilient while they look at all their colleagues graduating before them?
Take the time. Take the rest. Absolutely take the time. Nobody should take as long as I did, but and the truth is, I'll give you two other failures which are very common. I sent in a paper to the journal It was like my second or third paper. And I sent it to the premier journal in my field, and I got back 9 single-space pages of comments. I had such a pain in my stomach. I stuck it in the top drawer of the desk, and I didn't look at it again. About a year or so later, I'm at a conference, and the editor says to me, "So where's the paper?" I said, "I couldn't deal with it." He said, "I don't write 9 pages for nothing. I was waiting for your paper. I was hiding." You see, that's the mistake. You can't hide. Could have called him up and said, "Well, which one of these suggestions do you think is better than the other?"
There's a question for Amy. The validation of only preventable intelligent failure makes me think it is not an option. Is there any room for non-blameworthy, non-intelligent failures? Or are you a failure if your failures aren't intelligent?
Okay, all right. Now, I get it. I get the question, believe it or not. So here's how I think about this. Another thing that drives me crazy is that people use mistakes and failures and errors all interchangeably, right? So an error is something where, I mean, you can't have an error. An error, failure is a large category under which error fits. You can't have an error unless there's already, knowledge about how it's supposed to go, and it didn't happen. Does that mean I'm anti-error? Of course not, right? To err is human. We make mistakes all the time, and those are not blameworthy. Mistakes are never blameworthy. Now, showing up for work in a hospital drunk is blameworthy, right? So there's just a very clear, there's a clear difference between human error and mistakes, which we will all make, and we should not push them underground or we don't learn from them, and the small but still important list of actions that might be reliably considered blameworthy. And because those are so few, they should be, we should be able to sort of navigate around them. But the problem is we treat the regular stuff as if it were blameworthy, and then people don't want to talk about anything.
A question for Amanda. You mentioned that failure was always a presence. It didn't always happen, but it was always, and I guess especially in observational astronomy, always a presence. What keeps you moving forward, not freezing? And for my having writer's block, I mean, I'm sure there's a variation of research block.
Right, I get writer's block all the time. But in terms of for just continuing to do the work, there's the it's knowing about the things that because failure happens, it doesn't happen all the time. And so, and the times when things do work are so wonderful and so exciting. I just want to be there, right? And so it's I guess it means that it's the work that I'm doing. I find it exciting enough that I'm willing to put up with the failures because the successes are just so great. And I know that there's another success around the corner. And those happen. The big successes happen. The big failures happen. Everything, I get both of them, and so I don't want to. If I never were to try again, then that's the biggest failure ever.
But you also need a consensus among colleagues that this is what's going to happen.
That's true. I don't work by myself. Very few people work alone, and so I work with like-minded people who feel the same way. So, and I'm very, very fortunate to have that. So, yep.
A question for Regina. Even now that you understand the rules of the game better, would you still follow your heart?
I mean, I do get asked fairly frequently, this objectively didn't end very well. Would you go do it again? And I guess my answer is that I am glad that I went and ran and moved back to my hometown. And it was a tremendous undertaking for my entire family. I'm very grateful and glad that they accompanied me on that. But it is not something I would do again. And the reasons I would not do it again are that, first of all, it was just personally and professionally very destructive. So I really can't run again. But besides that, my analysis of what went wrong and kind of looking at the rules of the game, part of the problem was this business with the delegates, right? But there were also two other really serious challenges that I never found a solution to. The delegate thing more or less got solved now. The other two I think are unsolvable. And they were hiring staff. So I had tremendous difficulty finding and hiring and recruiting staff, especially anyone with any experience on a campaign. If you want to be a campaign staffer, there is a booming market out there. I get emails from people all the time looking for finance directors, looking for, seriously, you're all students, you're really smart, send me an email if you want to work on a campaign. But I really couldn't overcome the hurdle of recruiting and retaining the right people, and I don't see a way I would ever be able to do that in the future, just actually because of the geography of the area. And then the other really intractable problem was high-level political support, so like national-level support from fancy people in the Democratic Party. And I just couldn't even get them to pick up the phone. Like, I just don't have the right biography and the right connections to make an entree into that world unless something really changed structurally in my life. So I hope that answers the question. But I think it's helpful understanding the rules of the game, but in this case, I wouldn't repeat the exact same thing again.
Well, it turns out we are running out of time. I will leave it with one last question here. How can we train professors or leaders to create a psychologically safe environment in the workplace or, say, in a research group?
This is what I think about all day long. And I guess the short answer is go first, right? Be willing to stand out there saying, oh, here's what I got wrong, and emphasize, that research, for example, research is necessarily an uncertain, fraught, challenging journey that should end at least, as David Kelly says, more often in failures along the way to success. So sort of clarifying the rules of the game, because I think that is the rules of the game, and modeling the rules of the game goes an awfully long way. And then, of course, respond really well to bad news.
One last thought, Amy. What should the magnitude of a failure party be compared to a success party?
Oh, that's such a great question. I like to say, beer, not champagne, but maybe that does it.
Well, thank you all to Regina, Amy, Amanda, and Susan. Wonderful questions.